Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's special council meeting. I'd like to welcome members of council, members of staff, those who are joining us in the gallery, and those who are joining us and attending virtually this evening. We will begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are gathering on the land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. We would like to recognize that we are in the Robinson Superior Treaty Territory, and the land on which we are gathered today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. Specifically, we acknowledge the neighboring community of Mishkon First Nation, for whom we have great respect. We also recognize the contributions of all Indigenous people, including the Métis, in shaping and strengthening the community and province of Ontario. Thank you, and miigwech. We will now move on to item number 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, bylaws. There are no items listed under bylaws, so we will move on to item number 4, approval of the agenda.
Moved by Councillor Hatfield, seconded by Councillor Pato. Resolved that the agenda for the special meeting of council scheduled for Wednesday, November 27th, 2024, be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. There are no items under item number 5, delegations and presentations, or item number 6, announcements of given of notice. Are there any members of council who'd like to make a special announcement? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 7, new business. 7.1, 2005 draft capital budget. We'll take a moment to get the presentation queued up. And with that, I'll ask Councillor Hoffman if he can just turn off the light. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My mic's a little loud, I apologize. Tonight, your employees are here to present the 2025 draft capital budget. It is a draft budget with the intention that we tonight share the projects that we've included in the budget, including those that are targeted for the longer term, the 26 to 28 period. For Council's information, to get a better understanding of those projects that we're recommending for funding in 2025, but also to give plenty of opportunity for Council to provide input at a future date, and also to publicize to the community that they also have opportunity to provide input in the budget. So thank you very much. As we always start every year, some key considerations. This year, the challenges have been difficult. They've not been the easiest to deal with as a team, but I think we've come up with some great ways at addressing our budget issues in 2025. So some of the key considerations that we'd like to just highlight to Council is that this is a capital budget presentation only. The operating budget and the capital budget have to be done together. The capital budget depends on a portion of its funding coming from taxation, as well as reserves and grants. But one can't really be done without the other. But tonight we just wanted to take your time just to talk about what we're presenting as a capital. But there'll be a future meeting to talk about the operating budget. We've tentatively scheduled that, depending on Council's schedule in January, for Wednesday, January 8th. And then there can be a series of meetings in between or after for further discussion. We do propose that a number of public engagements take place in January on the capital and operating budget after January 8th. And that may include, as Council has indicated, in the spirit of meeting its guidelines of transparency and open to public input, that maybe we'll do something special this year in January, maybe have coffee with Council, have a special budget meeting that's not necessarily a formal council meeting and maybe do a survey of sorts to get more input from the public, because our past efforts haven't really seen a lot of input from the public. As always, when we do a capital budget, we do our best to align to council's priorities as set out in our strategic plan. And then other plans that we've done that council's aware of, our 10-year financial plan, our asset management plan, and there's a number of other plans that council's undertaken, such as their water and sewer master plan and other strategies, whether it be as set out in an audit report to council or recommendations from municipal affairs. All that we recommend in this budget does come from the basis of understanding those plans and trying to meet council's goals. The priorities in 2025 are based on those projects that we have deemed essential and they are critical, or they leverage a grant. So as council understands and is aware, sometimes we have a project in a year because there's a grant available. Maybe it doesn't meet all the other requirements to be in the asset management plan or listed as a top priority of council, but sometimes we don't have the luxury to wait. When a grant's available, we have to include that project in the year a grant is available. So that's another key consideration as you're going to hear tonight, especially as we try to achieve council's goal of enabling our community to be ready for more housing development. To meet our capital needs, again, there's opportunity to talk more about some of the things I'm going to highlight tonight, but we're presenting capital budget to council that includes a 4% tax levy increase and something new for council, consideration of what is known as a capital levy. It would be funds that are collected from the taxpayers every year that are in addition to a tax increase. In many municipalities in Ontario that are facing the same challenges, funding their infrastructure, especially if it hasn't been properly funded in the past or funds weren't available. This year, this budget proposes a 4% tax levy increase and a 2% new tax levy strictly for capital projects. That 2% would never be used for operational needs, be strictly going to reserve and capital projects. But these are things that we'll discuss more thoroughly with council so you understand our recommendation maybe better and the basis for it as we present the operating budget. It's just to keep in mind, this is just one option for council, and that's what's behind some of the projects and the way we funded things this year. A 1% capital levy or a tax levy, just to remind council, brings just under $50,000. So a 2% capital levy would only bring $100,000 to the municipality per year. The use of reserves in 2025 has increased. And there's basically two reasons, and I'll get into some of the details for you in the next slide. But ultimately, there are a set of grants that have a time limit. So our former gas tax grant, now known as the Canada Building Fund, it's just been renamed. We receive funds every year and they have to be spent within 5 years. So in 2025, we found ourselves, after saving money under some of those types of grants, that we had to spend a good chunk of it in 2025 because that 5-year deadline was coming up. But more importantly, I think for council and our ratepayers is that we had to minimize we had to minimize the tax levy increase that will be needed from the taxpayers so that council can maintain its infrastructure, but also maintain its existing services and programs. So using the reserves helps us fund some of these capital projects without using tax levy money. And we present, as always, a longer term budget tonight from 2025 to 2028. So council certainly has an idea of what are the projects coming up, what kind of financing are we looking at, and how are we going to fund the projects that we need to over the next 4 years so we can do some long-term planning with council. So those are some of our budget considerations. And I just want to highlight a couple of financial challenges. To create this budget the best we can for council, the municipality was facing some pretty big circumstances affecting how we operate in 2025. Two of those I'm going to talk about tonight, as council is aware and as recommended by the auditor. We have to start January 1st funding a new expense, and that expense for bad debt, or what's called doubtful accounts, where we haven't collected the money that we thought we would in the past couple of years, but we've spent it. We have to start to recover those monies if it doesn't appear that we're going to collect those funds back. And as the auditor asked of council and recommended that we put $360,000 into a new account for the collection of potential unrecovered monies. And so right away, that $360,000 starts us off in a negative, and it's not money that we've budgeted for in 2024. So it's a new cost. Again, if you remember that a 1% tax levy increase brings in about $50,000, that translates to a 7.5% increase in our tax levy just to fund that expense. Then the second thing I'll highlight tonight is the OPP costing. And as council's aware, this isn't just hitting the municipality of Wawa, it's hitting all municipalities in the province of Ontario. And the OPP costing for Wawa, as I've seen, because I've compared to many, we're amongst the highest, with a 27% increase being requested of the OPP of this municipality to their annual budget. So the increase over 24 to 25 is $213,545. Again, just for demonstration purposes, council really has no choice on that, and that would equate to a 4% tax levy. So we're starting off January 1st having to fund approximately a 14% tax levy. If we left things and everything was the same as 2024, council would be faced with looking at a 14% additional tax rate increase to the community. Staff is not going to recommend that. You can rest assured, but I think for demonstration purposes, it shows council tonight that when it came to trying to fund and set out a capital plan that this community can afford, that we think is reasonable, that we had challenges. So tonight, we're not recommending the capital that actually is set out for council to consider in its asset management plan and in the other plans that I mentioned previously, because I don't think as a community can afford it. So I'm trying to set the stage here for council. Mayor, I'm not sure if you want me to pause for questions at this point or continue on. Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. I think we just received a lot of information. I just wanted to pause for any questions, comments from council. I see a lot of concerned faces. Councillor Hatfield?
Maury, you answered the question I was going to ask. I wanted you to explain to me tax levy and the difference between tax levy and the capital levy and tax levy, and you did that right at the front. And when I did see 27% for OPP, I didn't know what to think. I thought, oh my goodness. Anyway, but you answered my question. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments from council before we proceed? Hearing none, I think we're okay to proceed to the capital budget summary.
Thank you. And then again, during our operating budget, which will be a much more detailed analysis for council, we'll talk about the other increases that we face every year that council's aware of, whether it be an increase to electricity rates or it be an increase to our contracts as we still deal with inflation and those types of things. There's other aspects that we'll talk about more detail. So for the capital budget summary, I'm going to hand off the presentation now to our treasurer, Manuela Badavania. I always pronounce it wrong. Alex, I just wondered if you could do just a little volume, because I find, I don't know if it's me, there's a lot of feedback.
Testing. I think it's fine. Thank you. I'm fine. I'm good. Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. So capital budget summary, the 2025 year only. So, sorry, I was just a little surprised here. We're planning on spending in 2025 just over $3 million, and almost half of that is coming out of the reserves this year. Partially to use up some of those granted reserves that they've reached their expiry date in 2025, so that's part, and part is just out of necessity. There's grants that we're also trying to access. The one thing, I think it's not in the slides here, but you'll notice when you've got the big budget spreadsheet, the one spreadsheet in your emails, and there is no longer a subject to funding there. We chose to just put the subject to funding within the regular section, this section, and with the understanding that if we got the funding, we would move forward. And those items also are trying not to use any taxation, because we shouldn't be using taxation for a project that we're not sure that we're going forward with. Also, you can see from taxation and user fees, we're down under $500,000 this year, which in prior years it was substantially more than that. And just a little side note on the side, there was in 2023, the operating deficit resulted in what was $15,000. And water and wastewater, which is included overall in our financial statements, had a surplus of $273,000. I made a mistake when I was doing this slide and made a recommendation here that we take some water reserves, that water surplus, and transfer it to the reserves. But I was reflecting on that this afternoon, and I thought, really, we need to look at that more closely and decide what to do with it outside of the operating budget, because if I look at the operating budget without the water and sewer, then that deficit would be more than the 15,000. Some of the capital projects that we've completed this year to date, some we've completed fully and some are still ongoing, and others we're still sourcing. But what's on the books to be completed by December 31st are the airport terminal building, the water trailer, the marina washrooms, which I believe that one's done, and the drill rig is done. The MMCC, the Mishcotton Memorial Community Center, Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects, that was a great success. Both those projects were completed. We were able to leverage a lot of grant money in order to get them done, which was good as well. The electric accessible van is here and operating. Water compressors, I think will be compressors for the water treatment plant will be getting done fairly soon. The asphalt hot box is here, and we've used it in the cenotaph we were able to use for our celebration on Remembrance Day. Was that more than one slide? No. Some of the projects that are continuing into 2025, which we've started this year, are the municipal software, which that's slated to, the financial portion is slated to go live by June and the remainder by the end of the year. The cemetery expansion is going to continue into 2025. The water intake project, the majority of it will happen in 2025. The hydrant rehabilitation, I think we've completed 2 years now, and we have a couple more years going forward to rehabilitate all of our fire hydrants. The water treatment plant filters, the final skid of filters will arrive in 2025, and then shortly behind that we'll start saving, because every 10 years is the life expectancy, and it's about $200,000 per section, so we'll start saving in the long-term planning shortly behind purchasing these ones. Landfill expansion is ongoing. This is mostly having to do with the permeable material that we have to cover our old landfills with, and then just preparing for new cells as we fill up this current new one. Sorry, I'm not sure if this is working properly now or not. Okay. 2025 new staff recommended. So for 2025 only, the town hall study, so this is not really a study, it's more architectural drawings and a plan on how we can move this building forward, make it more accessible, and to meet the needs of the future. And that would probably, well, that would most definitely have to include the library as well. As I think Maury said it many times before, once we start doing major renovations to a building, we have to make that entire building accessible to everyone. So not only the public, but the staff as well. The Olympia upgrade, Alex and I looked at what we could change around in the budget, and we moved some of the 2025 items further on into the future years, and he's going to upgrade, do some upgrades to the Olympia. He'll talk to you about that later this evening. The council chambers relocate. Council indicated at the last meeting they'd like to have a more accessible council chamber in the interim, so we've added that to this budget as well. Some smaller improvements at the MMCC. Also, redoing the roof if we're successful in getting a grant. So this is one of those lines where we would normally have seen it under subject to funding. Now it's in a go phase, conditional on obtaining that grant. The fire hall design and drawings for an expansion in the next year or two behind that. Fire hall furniture and training center, also conditional on grants. The sidewalk rehabilitation, we've started before. We're just going to continue forward with that. And Enabling Water Fund is a newer project, and it's, I believe, also contingent on funding, and I believe Maury will speak to that later this evening. Water distribution upgrade we've been doing for a while, as well as the pavement preservation, the IS building repairs, mower and fleet renewal, the water treatment plant, there are smaller items. Craig will speak to that later this evening as well as the airport. And I think I missed the brownfield land development, and we started that this year with the Magpie on Highway 17, and that will continue as needed. So the total cost again this year, 3.1 million, with 1.4 million of it coming from reserves, hopefully another 1.4 from grants, just to maximize those reserves, and a small amount from taxation. As part of our long-term planning, we're continuing as we've been going. What I've added to this graph that wasn't there previously is money that we'll be spending. Oh, sorry. Other way. Money that we'll be spending as well as money that we'll be saving. Because quite a few years now we've been saving in quite a few of these categories, and I think we've accumulated enough money in some of them that we're going to start spending. So you'll see negatives in this slide, and it just means that those projects are slated for those years. And either we'll stop saving for those items, or if they're continual, like the water treatment plant filters, then there'll be a plan to move forward. And the other new addition here is the capital levy. So we had a small amount, $286,000 from previous years for general capital, which came from previous surpluses. So I just combined them because they're general, they're not slated for any specific project. So the capital levy, which would not be slated for a specific project, but for all capital, is also combined there. So that you'll see the 100,000 going forward. We just did those. Yep. And then the town hall study and redesign. These are architectural drawings, possibly a structural engineer to go through this building and determine what needs to be done, and if the money that we've slated in the future years will be enough. So we need to have some drawings to move forward. We need to know what the structural integrity of this building is. We need to know what we need to do in order to meet accessibility requirements. Are we going to, how many washrooms do we have to have accessible on what levels? What kind of a lift do we have? Those kinds of questions need to be answered before we can move forward with a renovation. And then the renovation is slated to happen between 2026 and 2027, with $1 million coming out of reserves. Very little of that is actually coming out of specific reserves, such as the Canada Building Fund. This building doesn't qualify. I'll jump ahead. The Fire Hall, which is also slated to be redesigned, and Maury will speak to that later, has a significant amount coming out of reserves, and that is the Canada Building Fund, because fire halls are allowed. So we've moved money around from one project to the other as we're allowed to, in order to maximize the reserves the best we could. We're looking at $3.5 million in loans. We're trying to push those loans out as far as we can. So our $1 million contribution would happen in 2026, so that we don't have to borrow money till closer to the end of the project. And one of the sources that we're looking at is Infrastructure Ontario, and they do have a construction loan where you pay monthly the interest only until the project is complete, and then you go into an amortized loan or mortgage at that point over 30 years, and that's been reflected or will be reflected in the operating budget as well. Computer hardware, so this is something that council has seen every year. It's how we renew all of our computer hardware and make sure that we have computers on our desks that are working and functioning, and all of the hardware that we need to run our programs, not only in this office, but at the MMCC, at the garage, at whatever locations need that kind of hardware. And this also was, we have a new person working in our IT or heading up our IT, and it was a recommendation from them as well, and we've incorporated that recommendation into the capital. And now I'm going to pass it off to Alex Patterson.
Before we go into the next section, I just wanted to pause for questions and comments from council on the information we just received. Councillor Hatfield?
When you guys do your reports, you're going to explain different things. Like, I don't know what a water intake is. I don't understand what that is, and you'll explain that? Okay, and like the water meters, we'll have questions on any question we have, the boys will be able to answer. Okay, that's basically what I want to know, because I have some questions. Thank you.
Councillor Can?
I just wanted to know, you're saying to start doing the municipal building. Why now?
This was a priority of council for several years now, and also included in the strategic plan. It's been on our capital budget for several years.
If I may, Mayor, to Councillor Cannon, there's a lot more to the why now. I think it should have been done earlier, and it's just a matter of what I think the municipality can afford. But having said that, there was a study done in 2015 by an engineer. This HVAC system is original to the building and doesn't work. Our staff are cold, they're hot. Alex can attest to the fact that the HVAC is so old we can't get it serviced. So we add on things like that we had a fire behind an employee's desk because an old wire caught fire that we didn't know about. There are severe health and safety concerns with this building, so the why now is I don't believe that council should delay. Not just meeting the AODA accessibility requirements that, this council, through its accessibility plan that was approved last week, has indicated is really important, but it's important to the community as well. But it's becoming a point where the things that are required in this building, and they are even come down to the age of the rugs and the design of the building, and how we have to have an employee look on a camera from their office to see if someone comes to the front desk, how inefficient. So it's also about organizational efficiency. So I hope that answers, because I could go on about the why now. Again, we do our best in capital budget. It's just to get that engineering architect firm this year to come in and tell us, is it about in the best use of taxpayers' money? Is it even worth renovating, or do we have to start planning for a new building? So it's studying what is the best approach for the future.
I get that, but with all the other capital projects that are being brought tonight, what is priority more? Like, is it more priority than a fire hall or a fire truck?
Again, based on condition assessments, and we had preliminary condition assessments done of the fire hall, this building, Magpie. My answer to council is they're all a priority. They're all a priority based on the ages of the building. However, this building was identified not just by this council, but the council previous and the council previous. It is a number one priority in the strategic plan of this council that making this building accessible was very, very important, and council was unanimous on that. This building, because accessibility is available in the fire hall, it's not available in the Magpie. So going through a series of review in terms of what's the building age, what's its condition, how many employees work there, what's the most used building. Going through that exercise, I would say to council that staff unanimously agrees that all buildings are important, but we have to do it in a staged approach, that this is the most important based on the information we have that goes back at least to 2015, where engineers have said to the councils of those days, you better do something. And the longer you wait, then you don't parge an outside window or fix cement falling off. The longer you wait, you get, the life cycle will end versus an opportunity to rehabilitate. So this building, for a number of factors that also include how many employees work here and the condition of the building. So we go through the exercise, but certainly to put money aside in 2025, especially, in a situation where money isn't as free maybe as we'd like, until we get that engineer doing an assessment on the building, I can't say for certainty to council that this should be the top building. That's, a professional will tell us what the condition is and, what repairs need to be made. So we can come back to council when we do this next year for the 2026 budget, and we'll clearly say to council, this should be a priority versus any of the other priorities that we identified. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thanks.
I think one thing that I didn't hear out of either of those conversations is that I'd like to add is that this building is the heart of our municipal government. I think we often say that the heart of the community is the MMCC, but this is really the nucleus of our municipal government, and where we're allowing our employees to work in a substandard building. And that really reflects on the way that council, if we prioritize and continue to allow that to happen as previous councils have, and just, putting it off, it reflects on the way council, might feel or our relationship with our staff people. And our staff is our team is our most important resource. And when we continually allow that to happen, I think it's a major reflection on our relationship with our team. And if we don't take care of our team, then our team's not going to take care of us, and it's not going to take care of our community. And that's really where it comes down to. So we need to make sure that it is a priority. Certainly.
I just have a comment. Can you hear me, Maureen? The only thing I would like to see is I've heard about the township building, how rotten it is for many years. The center of the building is an old school for some reason. And I really would like the people of Wawa to understand the building is not in good shape. I'm really happy that they're going to have an engineer come in. I think this is the second or third time they do this. But this time, we have to do something. And the people of Wawa, I really think, need to be explained why. That's all I'd like.
Councillor Hoffman?
Yeah, I'd also like to echo the mayor and Mitch. This building should be accessible to everyone, taxpayers and our workers. It's something to be proud of and something that they can walk into and not have to worry about, oh my God, I need a cane to get up the stairs.
Or a jacket to wear in the wintertime. So we want our employees to have a nice, safe, warm place to work in the wintertime and a nice, cool place to work in the summertime. So But I think we're digressing. We'll kind of rein it back in, and I'll pass it back over to Alex to take us through the community service and tourism portion.
If it's okay, Madam Mayor, I'll just pause at the end of each slide, and if there's any specific questions about a project, then I can answer them then. Does that work?
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. So the first project under subject to funding is the community center roof. If council remembers, in a monthly report, I noted that we had applied to a community recreation infrastructure fund offered by the province of Ontario. As council knows, we just finished a bunch of work on the roof. It solved a bunch of leaks, which I'm happy with. We had more than 20, but it did not solve all of them. And walking through after the project with the roofers and patching some holes from when the project happened, the Band-Aids on Band-Aids on Band-Aids are starting to be trouble. We also, during the project, were able to expose some of the insulation that we don't typically get to look at between the roof membrane and the roof deck, and that's in very poor shape. And I was able to, as part of this grant, do a pretty basic set of calculations on new insulation versus old insulation, and projected a cost savings of between $15,000 and $20,000 of electricity a year for just something as simple as making sure the insulation wasn't wet and damaged. So that's a project that we applied for special consideration for. So you can see Manuel has taken the conservative budget approach of a 50-50 grant. However, we applied for special consideration to get up to 70% funded, and we expect to hear back from that in February or March. So this is a project that we would return to council should we be successful or unsuccessful with the funding, and have a conversation that time about how we can move forward. But this, like many recreation projects, very important for us to get funding on.
Questions, comments? Councillor Hatfield?
How old is the arena roof?
So the barn itself, I'll be honest, I'm not sure. The flat roof, which this is proposing to replace, is 1996. So it's original to the addition.
Oh, my goodness.
Councillor Hoffman?
I was just going to say, this is strictly for the flat roof, not for the arena.
Please proceed.
Next one. So the batteries on our Olympia, when we purchased the Olympia, the batteries were estimated to last between 5 and 8 years. These batteries are at their 5-year mark, and they are starting to show signs of deterioration. We replaced 2 cells this summer, which bought us a little bit more time, but it's essentially time to go through the warranty process and have them replaced. So I'm working with the company right now on warrantying them and seeing what kind of a prorate they're going to give us. This was something that we had planned for when we purchased the machine. So when we purchased it, I expected a battery replacement, and that was still giving us a 14-year payoff between propane versus battery. So this is something that is coming, I'll be honest, about a year earlier than I had hoped, however, was planned for. So what Manuel and I did is the tractor that we have seems to be doing okay. So you'll see in the next slide, that was slated for this year. We pushed that out another year and then put the Olympia in this year. So they essentially switched places.
No question.
Awesome. Next one is community center improvements. So every year we put together a small budget of things that need to be done at the community center that wouldn't be part of bigger funding projects. So this year it's small items like a new dishwasher for the kitchen, redoing some of the washroom stalls, just some bits and pieces work that is part of continually upkeeping that facility. Next one is the tractor. So like I said, we've talked about this for a couple years. We were able to do some repairs on the tractor deck a couple years ago to push purchasing a whole new unit out a little bit more. We were able to keep it in fairly good shape over the summer, and I'm confident it's going to last us an extra year. So we pushed that project out to 2026.
Councillor Hatfield?
Somebody has to straighten me out on this tractor. There's just one blue tractor?
Yes.
I thought we just bought that.
Oh, 2012?
That long ago?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, Joe, you probably, it was before I started at the rink, so it's before 2012. Okay.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sam puts a lot of armor all on it, but it's a pretty old tractor. Okay, so the next one is the TIC interior. So this is again something that we're looking for funding for. Two-pronged approach here. We're looking to make the washrooms accessible, make the doorways accessible. They meet some minimal accessibility standards, but if you've been in there, the doorway thresholds don't meet modern standards. So it's the kind of thing where we haven't worked on the Tourist Information Center, so we haven't done that substantial construction that forces us to make it accessible. But you can imagine the variety of people that we get in there every summer. Lots of folks with accessibility issues. I myself have had to lift people over the threshold with wheelchairs. So we're looking for some accessibility specific funding for washrooms and doorways at the Tourist Information Center. 2028 capital project. So this is now getting like further into the future, just some forecasted things. So we're forecasting that we're going to need to do some HVAC work at the very back of the arena, as well as do some work to the shops back there. Mostly, as far as I can tell, when the 96 building was built, those were old dressing rooms and not much was done to them to really make them shops. So we've had some ventilation issues identified when we charge the batteries there. We have a pretty old fan there right now, but the whole system needs to be redone.
Any questions, comments for Alex? Councillor Hatfield?
Alex, I was at the back of the ring a few times. There's a lot of stuff back there. Like, can you put it somewhere? Is it, the room's not big enough, or do you need a trailer to put stuff in, or?
We used to put stuff in sea cans,
Yeah.
and then we got a lot of sea cans at the back of the rink, and it became an issue. So part of the reason there's lots of stuff there right now is because there's a bunch of gym storage equipment that was waiting for the mirrors to be installed. So a bunch of that stuff is leaving tomorrow, now that the mirrors are up, to be installed in the gym. So that'll help us a bit. But the back is also our storage for all of our parks equipment, a lot of the supplies that we have. And I mean, fundamentally, when the 96 building was done, those are just old dressing rooms there. So we never really had like a dedicated storage area, a dedicated like place for park stuff.
So
It's been a struggle.
What you're proposing would fix all that?
No, it won't, because that would take some construction to the building, like a construction of a garage or something like that, and that's not something we really have the money for. This has specific like health and safety concerns back there, especially related to ventilation. This project is intended to fix those.
Okay, thanks.
Maureen, I presume that you're handling protective services?
Yes, thank you. And on behalf of the fire chief, he apologizes he can't attend, but he is helping a nonprofit agency tonight with the matter. So council has supported capital renovations to the fire hall in terms of furniture. So some furniture has been purchased this year, and we thank our members of our fire advisory committee for ensuring that, as recommended in the Lumex report and requested by firefighters, that furniture's been ordered. But it doesn't address the whole issue of the interior condition. So we've applied for a grant. We applied in about October for a $50,000 grant through the Emergency Management Fund. We applied a year ago and were denied, but they opened up the funding again. And it basically, the funding would just go to replace additional furniture, add new technology, make their training room an actual training room, and improve the interior space and develop a training area. It's 25,000 grant and 25,000 reserves. That project would only go ahead if the grant's received. And I think it's February. I think we're supposed to hear by February. But regardless, some new furniture is coming for our firefighters. And we'll look forward to touring council in the future. We're hoping to have that done by the end of the month. When we were talking about the municipal building, what's in the 2025 capital budget is also money to hire an engineer and architect to do the design drawings and investigation into the condition of the fire hall. We believe that doing both at the same time will give council the information that it requires, as well as staff, on to helping us to make sure our priorities are identified and done strategically. We see doing both buildings at the same time as offering some cost benefit. if you go to tender, the larger the project, the economies of scale come in, and maybe we'll have some cost savings. So in our budget, both for 2025 and as set out long-term, the idea is that we would look at getting those design drawings and information done for our fire hall. So in the budget is $50,000 for that, totally from taxation. The long-term plan includes renovating, adding a new garage bay, and doing some interior renovations, such as including proper shower, is budgeted in the long term. And you'll see that in your long-term budget. Oh, here it is. Sorry, I advanced my talking before I looked at the slide. The fire hall renovations then start in 2026. And provided that the engineering report supports this, we're budgeting and planning for the fire hall renovations, $750,000 estimated. And as Manuela was discussing earlier in the introductory remarks, the federal gas tax or the community building fund, fire halls are an eligible infrastructure that fits into the funding criteria. And so we would use $500,000 from that fund and $250,000 from reserves. So we project that we would begin that in 2026, and over 26, 27, undertake some major renovations to the fire hall. Pumper truck number 1 has been identified as requiring to be replaced. It is a 1997 pumper truck. It does sound old because it is old. However, it also is by hours of use, so it sounds older than it really is. But nonetheless, it's time to look at that piece of equipment. We are estimating roughly $1 million, especially as we project out based on the cost increases we've seen for equipment, that $1 million would be required. We have been saving for this in the long-term planning over the years, and council deserves a lot of credit for doing that and preparing for this expense. But in 2027, the money will come from reserved, and hopefully we'll have a new pumper truck.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments? Councillor Hatfield?
Sorry. I really understand what you're doing and everything, Maury. The thing I don't understand is they never did any of this in the past. Was it because they didn't have asset management or any of that? Like, I don't understand how they couldn't have done some of the stuff. It's like, this stuff is really old. Was it money? Was it not knowing? Like, I don't understand that. And I've been asked that question.
Yes, and I am not sure the response to that, other than to say, and Manuela will speak to it, so I'm only giving my opinion, it wasn't really identified by the provincial government. We are a creature of the province, so the province maybe didn't, communicate to municipalities that it needed to start saving for infrastructure. It was never really part, you never heard about asset management plans, previous to 5, maybe 10 years ago. So it just wasn't maybe recognized as important. I think, too, the primary reason, then I'll pass it to Manuela to give you a better response, is that costs have just increased so much, where in the past, councils didn't have to deal with the issues you're dealing today. If we look at the amount of provincial grants given to municipalities, they were substantial in the past. So you didn't, as a council, have to worry about these things, whereas council's seen, when you start adding on, the jumps in cost of living, the cuts to grants, along with the other things as a community we've experienced. And unlike a lot of communities in Southern Ontario, we have no assessment growth. So a lot of municipalities accommodate increases in their budget because their assessment's growing. But this municipality had to deal when Algoma Ore closed in 1998, losing one of its largest taxpayers back then. So it's a combination of a number of things. There's not just one answer. But I don't believe it's the fault of any particular.
No, it's not the fault, but it's nice to understand, like you explained a lot to me, and probably the other councillors already knew, but I thank you.
Manuela?
I was just going to say Maureen's pretty much verbalized my entire answer, so I don't really need to add anything to it. Asset management planning did start back in 2012 because the province did recognize that municipalities were not doing it, and we were reliant on federal and provincial funding in order to achieve these projects. And they were tightening their budgets, and they wanted to ensure that we were tightening ours and that we understood why we were doing it and how. So it was just a slow transition of responsibility for our own assets to ourselves.
Thank you. Craig, Infrastructure Services, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, don't know if I'll be as professional sounding as the rest of them, but we're going to go through this. So, our annual capital project, sidewalk rehabilitation, we were doing that this year. We'll be doing that again next year. $35,000 we're looking to get out of reserves to do as many sidewalks as we can with that kind of money. The goal is to try to repair anything that's out there that's broken or unsafe. This year I drove around myself at the end of the year here and tried to focus on a lot of the sidewalks that we plow throughout the winter to ensure that anything that we're plowing is going to be in good shape for plowing and things like that. So we spent some time fixing them up. And of course, anything that we have as far as trips and falls, we have to address right away. So that's an ongoing project that we're going to be doing for the next 2 years, and then from there it'll carry on with the taxation. So,
Craig, I'm just going to ask you just to speak into
all
your
right,
microphone.
any
now.
questions?
No, please proceed.
Okay. So from there, we're going to go into the pavement preservation, and this project began in 2021 with addressing the pavement concerns over the time of the highest to lowest priority ratings. So in 2021, they did a street scan project that assisted in helping us to identify priority areas. Costs for 2025 to 27, we're expected to spend $150,000 per year, and that's to be funded through the combination of taxation and reserve. 2028, there may be a larger project, a repave project going on for $1,650,000. So timeline is annual, and the project goal will be to replace small sections of the road in need of immediate attention and the reduced road and maintenance costs by having new pavement.
Councillor Hatfield?
I'm really sorry. I always have so many questions. Craig, when you look at the roads that need to be done, like you have a sketch you said that was done before?
They had a vehicle come in that did a scan of the road, so it would give you an in-depth. It'd be like doing an X-ray on the road and checking for any.
So that's what you're following?
Well, that's part of the idea, and then the rest of it is just go out there and look at it, and you can see where we're having problems, and
Okay.
we're addressing them as they come.
Okay, thanks.
Craig, I had a question. In 2028, you say there's going to be a larger repave project. Has the location for that project been identified yet?
We had to put Craig on the spot here tonight. No, we haven't 100% identified that, but we will be using the street scan as well as obviously our knowledge from our people on the ground. The other thing that Cindy and I have talked about recently and may do before 2028 is another street scan to update our asset management plan closer to that time. And then the third consideration that we always need to look at is timing and other projects. So if something was to happen, if there was a major catastrophe in one of the water mains and that area, Lord forbid, collapsed of road, then we had to do underground work, then we would probably switch this money over to that project so that we could maximize the underground and the paving at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Councillor Cannon?
Me first. Now I forgot what I was going to say.
Councillor Cannon?
You said next year you're going to, I guess it's $150,000 next year for
For 25, 26, 27.
Can you identify any of the streets that are coming up that you're going to?
Can you speak on that? I mean, I could identify a bunch, but probably won't be the ones that somebody else has identified.
So like we've already said it, we do refer to the street scan every year in the spring, and Dan sits down, I believe, with Cindy and goes through it, and they determine which areas are most in need, as well as any critical changes that may have happened over the winter and early in the spring. Because there are some that can just be fixed with, especially now that we have the asphalt hot box, can do a better job than what we were able to do with the cold mix in the past. So, we do that. And sometimes there's other concerns that raise throughout the year that steer us towards a certain section of road. I think we saw that happen with Maple Street a couple years ago.
Thank you. Councillor Hoffman?
The street scans, do they go down to the sewers too, or are they just looking at the road surface?
No, it's a LiDAR car, and it has a camera attached to it, and then they have a smaller unit that goes on the highway, I think on the sidewalk, sorry. I believe it was here too, possibly 2021, 3 years ago. So it went through the whole town, and it does a camera image, and it creates a spreadsheet of all that. So it's just surface, it doesn't go into the sewer. We did look at CCTV equipment as a possibility last year. That didn't happen, and we decided not to move forward with it at this time.
Councillor Hatfield?
We are still looking in redoing Tamarack. We didn't get the funding this year, but are we going to reapply to try to get it?
That's coming in a future slide tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there are no other questions, we'll move along to the next slide.
Okay, so the next slide is a project capital brownfield land development. This project will assist in the rehabilitation of the deteriorating and dilapidated properties. Priority ranking is high priority. Initial rehabilitation began in 2024 when we took down the building on Highway 17 and got the eyesore gone. So. Any questions? Oh, I guess there's another page to it, I'm sorry. I didn't look up there, so. Yeah, okay. Any questions to that?
Councillor Hoffman?
We're tearing down old buildings now?
Only that are recommended that may cause any kind of issues as far as health and safety concerns and stuff like that.
No other, seeing or hearing no other questions, please proceed to the next slide.
Next one is our capital project would be fleet renewal. So the cost for 2025 to 28 is $30,000 per year to be funded equally from taxation and reserves. Timeline 2025 to 28. Project goal and the outcome would be in 25 to replace a 2015 Dodge 1500, and in 26 to replace the 2015 Ford 550, and in 27 to replace the 2016 Dodge 1500.
Questions, comments? Councillor Cannon?
Is there any way that we can expand the life of these trucks? Because, 10 years old, to me, is not that old. And is there a way to change the way because buying a new vehicle that's 10 years old, instead of using it, a couple of more years because we have how many in the fleet right now? 7, 9?
No, it's not that many. We got, if you're counting water department, they have 2. And then we have 2 Dodges, a Ford 3/4 ton, 2 Chevys, and our 550. How many was that?
9.
You wouldn't include the 550 because that would be a plow truck.
Yeah,
That would
that's
be a big
not a half ton or.
Not a half ton. Sorry.
But I know that 10 years old might seem old and we should start replacing them, but I can see putting the money away each year. But is there any way we can downsize in our fleet and work with what we have?
Hard to get people around. I know Jim can walk out to the Goose and back, but it's hard to get everybody to work without a vehicle, so. To lengthen the life of vehicles, there's something that I'd like to recommend in our new purchases is maybe to have them undercoated and stuff like that to keep the rust from
Yeah.
taking over the bodies. A lot of our vehicles now, we're doing quite a few repairs to them, but our bodies are just falling off of them. And it's quite expensive, and as far as safety-wise, it just won't pass the safeties.
Yeah, because we should be able to expand it, try and expand it, do other things to try and, like you said, the undercoating.
Yes.
Which I'm surprised we don't do now. I mean, when we bought all those vehicles at once, and nobody thought to, do the undercoating, like,
I can't speak on
I know you-
what happened before, but that was one of the things as well, is all of those vehicles were bought all at the same time, basically. So now they're all coming due again, so we're trying not to put them all on the, on the board right now. We're just kind of bringing one in every year to get back to what we used to do here. And that's just what we have to do. I mean, I've got a 2019 and out in the back that's in pretty good shape, but it's not a work vehicle. You don't take it out behind the airport and bounce it over stumps and everything when we're cutting brush and stuff like that. So, I mean, work trucks are a little harder to keep up than the regular passenger trucks.
So just to summarize, because I just want to make sure that I understand, and rather than, because I heard a lot of comments, so I'm not sure that I heard a specific question. Councillor Cannon, am I hearing that you're asking staff to investigate and bring back a recommendation to see how we can extend the life cycle of the fleet?
yeah, I was told we have a policy that has how long we keep a vehicle and what like even trying to, instead of buying a brand new one every year.
But do you want to frame it as a question?
Okay, I would like staff to come back to council with ways of maybe extending the life of the vehicles or seeing if we can change things up a little bit so they do last longer than, 10 years or.
And I'll just ask council if they agree and support that inquiry. Maury, do you have any questions or comments? It sounds like the rest of council is in favor of us investigating how we can extend the life of our fleet. Is that something that we can bring back to council in this budgetary process?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the JD loader. Project description is the loader will be used to assist with snow and removal activities, load trucks with aggregate, sand for the roads, sidewalk rehabilitation, landfill cover, assist with water and sewer emergency work. Cost timeline is $450,000 with funding from a combination of $100,000 taxation, $350,000 from reserves. Funds are being raised annually with the purchase of 2026. Project goal outcome is to replace the asset necessary for operations. So just a comment that I'm going to make, it's probably our most utilized piece of equipment that we have. It's probably the most active piece of equipment that we have. Everything else, we use them all, but this one here is probably our busiest and most needed piece of equipment that we have.
Questions, comments? Councillor Hatfield?
I always just like to know how old I know I know what that does because I've seen it on the road and it's always doing something. So it is well used. But how old is that machine, do you know?
2010.
Oh my, that's old.
Councillor Hoffman,
That's what I was going to ask.
any other questions or comments?
Holding the wrong papers. Okay, so the next one is 2025 to 27 capital project of smaller projects. Costs, 2025 to 26, 55,000 a year. IS building, 55,000 per year to be funded from a combination of taxes, water fees, and reserves. Mower, 2025 and 2028, $10,000 to be funded from taxation. Water treatment plant, 2025, Camlock, 22,000, and 2026, an MCC, 20,000 to be funded from the water reserves. Timeline for the IS building, Magpie, is ongoing. Mower to be purchased in the spring of 25 and 28. Water treatment plant, the Camlock, 25, and the MCC is in 26. Project goal and outcome to reduce annual maintenance costs, plus preserve and beautify building exteriors.
Questions, comments? Councillor Cannon?
Just a question, the IS building, what exactly do you want to do to that building?
Maintain it so we can work in it.
Is that with the ventilation and everything that,
We don't necessarily work in it other than our mechanic. We meet there, do our meetings and have our lunches and end our day and begin our day. Our mechanic is the one that's usually in that building, as well as myself and Dan. But as far as the rest of the crew, we're all out working within the town. The building is old, as well as, this one and the rest of our established buildings in this town. So, yes, there's something that we need to do to it, so.
and $55,000 per year, how much can you do with that amount?
$55,000 worth.
And
If you
can-
give me 60, I'll spend 60.
Oh, okay. And can you tell me what a Camlock is and a MCC?
As far as I know, the Camlock was the thing that failed on us during our electrical break there, and the water treatment plant went down. So it's a mechanism that flips over to the generating system, and it failed. It was recognized during this last water problem that we had. So the Camlock didn't work, and then the MCC that connects to it wasn't working as well. There were some faults in it, so they need to be replaced.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Next slide, please.
Okay, capital project, sand dome. They say sand salt dome. We don't use much salt, but sand dome. Cost 2028, $500,000 to be funded, 50,000 from taxation and 450,000 from reserves. Timeline ongoing through capital long-term planning. Project goal and outcome to install a dome to protect winter road material from inclement weather, snow, rain, reducing damage to the equipment, as well as health and safety of our workers.
Questions, comments? Councillor Cannon?
Put one up at the airport before, and you've never asked for this for the town.
Great question.
So I'll respond by saying, it's my understanding it was asked of councils previous to you. Again, it comes down to monies available and priority. But the reason the airport went forward is because we had a grant. And so as I said in my starting remarks, sometimes projects rise up in priority because of grants available. So the Sand Salt Dome at the airport was funded by a grant where at this time we haven't been able to identify for a very high cost project, albeit with great return on that investment. We don't see grants available for that.
Yeah, that was my next question. Is there a grant for the one for the town?
Any other questions? Next slide, please.
Okay, so the next project capital is airport equipment. Cost 2025, 100,000 from reserves. 26, 200,000 from reserves. Required for used leased blower, loader, and plow truck. Project goal outcome to replace aging airport equipment exceeding useful life.
Questions, comments? Councillor Hoffman?
How old's the loader at the airport?
1996. The old Smoky, we call it.
And the,
Truck is same thing. It's almost like a fire truck. We spoke earlier about fire trucks and how the age of a fire truck, and they sit in a fire hall and they stay in good shape. The firemen take care of them. They look really good. I wish all of our equipment looked like that, but that 96 truck out there looks really nice, but it's another one that's just seen its better days.
and then is there talk about a snow blower, or didn't we?
The big snow blower that goes on the loader, Jim, you know, the ones that
Yeah,
that
that's-
blow the snow right across the road with and that.
Is that a new snow blower?
No, that one's, I don't know what year that one is, but it's an old one as well. Not as old as the old, that they used to drive up and down the runway itself. Can't remember the name of it, but it was, yeah, no, it's old as well.
I think we're ready to go on to the next slide.
So next capital budget project would be water distribution upgrade, 25 to 28. Project description, this project prioritizes upgrading the municipality's booster pump station to ensure adequate distribution system pressure to meet the required fire flows. Priority ranking is high. Identify in the SBA Water Master Plan as an immediate concern. This project will protect business owners in the municipality and in the industrial park, and, that's it, it says and, can assist in facilitating any community expansion efforts in the Pinewood Drive area. Cost for 2025 to ongoing would be $75,000 a year, to be funded from the water and wastewater user fees. Timeline, replace ongoing. Example would be the compressors. Project goal outcome to replace or remediate aging water infrastructure as per water master plan and recommendations.
Questions, comments? And I think this is the last slide for you, Craig. Water treatment plant HVAC.
Project description is this project was identified as a priority by the municipal engineer. Priority ranking, medium priority. Initial rehabilitation to begin in 28 with the initial section to be determined. Cost in 2028 will be $300,000 and it's to be funded from the reserves.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments for this 28 capital project?
Craig, so the water treatment plant needs a new HVAC already?
This is a 2028 project.
Oh,
Three years from now.
thank you very much. You did a good job, Craig.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? before we move on to the next segment? Seeing no other questions, Craig, thank you very much for your presentation. I'll echo Councillor Hatfield's sentiments. You did a great job. Maury, I will pass it over to you for the 2028 Capital Project Enabling Water Fund.
Thank you, Mayor. And this project will loop the water and sewer distribution system that runs from Government Road at the corner of Government Road and Tamarack, down Tamarack to the intersection of Regina. It will allow for the municipality to ensure that the services required, and those services include fire hydrants, the repaving of the road, one side to have a sidewalk. So those things required to enable us to extend servicing that would open up 24 residential lots in the municipality for development. The funding has been applied for. We applied, I think it was last year, but in our first round we were denied. And then the government opened up the program again in September, I believe, and we applied. So this project would start in 2025 pending funding. My apologies, I was trying to get to the next slide. So the total project, when you take into consideration, it does include paving, is $2.2 million, and it would be funded from the combination of the grants, taxation. I think that's supposed to be reserves. I'm not sure there's a donation. Oh, news to me, but it would begin in 25 and carry over 2 years. The funding formula is 27% the municipality has to put in, and the grant would be 73%. So it's above 50%, so it's a good grant. But some of the funding would come from our reserves, but it also would come from our water and sewer funds. So because part of it is water and sewer, we've moved as a municipality, like most, to fund that from our water and sewer user fees, with approximately 1.59 million coming from the grant. I don't know if there's any other information now.
Is there any questions about the Water Enabling Fund?
Maury, I didn't get, did you say it wasn't going to be paved?
No, included in the budget is that it would be paved.
Oh, thank you.
And I think one important note that I'll make about this project is that 24 lots, housing lots, would accounts for just approximately 40% of our housing goal that we set out. So that's a really important. So we have done quite a bit of advocacy with the provincial government on this second round. So we will cross our fingers. Manuel, are you taking the next slide on your capital budget?
The next slide is, I'm not going to go through all the projects, but it's a summary of the projects that we are hoping to do, are planning on doing in 26, 7, and 8. The key ones here for me are the town hall, so those renovations would start in 26 and 27, primarily with money coming from reserves in 26 and then a loan in 2027. The TIC interior is slated for 26, the tractor Alex talked about. The fire hall renovations would also start in 2026, and I believe almost all of that would be coming from the Canada Building Fund, as well as some money that we have set aside in the last few years for the fire hall expansion. Sidewalk rehabilitation will be going on for many, many years, as will pavement preservation. The water distribution, pardon me, which Craig spoke about this evening. Those projects are being determined by the Water Master Plan. If you remember a couple years ago, the company SBA came in and they did a big examination of our water system, and they gave us quite a comprehensive list of items that we need to address in our water and sewer system, and they've identified the priority of each of those projects. So we've set aside money every year to accomplish some of those projects. The IS building will be ongoing, fleet renewal. Yes, we will look at what we can do with that, but it's still prudent for us to plan every year, set aside smaller amounts of money so it's not one large sum at any given time. Airport equipment, we've also spoke about, and we're looking, we tried for many years to get a grant for airport equipment. Unfortunately, because we do not have a commercial flight out of our airport, we don't qualify for any of the Transport Canada grants. So we've put a smaller amount of money in the budget for this year and next year under airport equipment, and we will look at new and innovative ways to leverage that money, whether it's possibly leasing some of the equipment or using it as a down payment for a lease, or looking at some used equipment. We'll try to come up with a best case scenario and bring that back to council. I think that's, unless council has questions about this side, I can move on. I guess what I'd really like to note here is that historically, when we've done a few years, we found that we had a strong budget in year 1 and 2, and then we had almost nothing in the last year. So we're getting better at that. Our year 2 is 4.4 million. Our year 3 is 4.7 million, and we're almost at 3 million in year 4. So we've done a very good job of forecasting projects into the future. Multi-year capital budget, just how we're going to spend that money, where it's coming from. And again, you can see there's a tendency going forward to take less out of taxation, more from the reserves, leverage it with grants where we can. We're not aware of any grants right now that we can use in 27 and 28, so if they're sitting at 0, but rest assured, when grants come available, we will be applying. And other can be donations or water user fees sits under other, and the large 3.5 million in 2027 is from the loan. The project for this building is estimated at 4.5 million, with $1 million from reserves and 3.5 million from a loan. Reserves and reserve funds. So I could do a whole evening on reserve and reserve funds. I spent a lot of time going through our reserves in the last couple of weeks, but I was able to summarize it on, I believe, one slide for you. So right now we're sitting at the end of this year at approximately 12 million. We had 12 million at the beginning of the year. We spent 1.8. We put back 1.5, and we're sitting at 12.8 at the end of 2024. It's been a council priority in the strategic plan to build our reserves and our ability to do things in the future. So while we were using a lot of the reserves, I tried to keep that in mind and maximize not only the use of the reserves, but not depleting them to nothing. So the beginning balance in 2025 is 12.2. We're going to be spending 2.8. We're putting back 1.8, which will leave us with 11.5. The important column to me is the obligatory or committed. So out of that 11.5, 6.6 million is already earmarked for specific projects or committed through some kind of grant funding, which means at the end of 2025, although we have 11.5 million in the bank, we only have 5 million that we can use. So keep that in mind as we're going through. I'm not going to redo all the numbers. You can see the numbers, but I really like to point out that by the time we get to 2028, 10.8 million is at the beginning, 10.1 is at the end. So really it looks like we've only brought our reserves down about 1.5 million. But now when you take off the obligatory reserves, we only have 2.1 million left that we can use. So we really depleted 3.1 million in that 4 years of what's accessible to us right away or not earmarked for something specific.
I just have a comment.
Councillor Hatfield?
Manuela Mori and the staff that's here, you always include council, telling us how well we're doing, but I truly, truly believe the work is done with you guys. We just look at everything and hope we make the right decision, but you guys are the ones that do all that, not us.
Thank you for that.
And I'm just, all these things are doable if we get the grants?
No, some were no grants and some were with grants.
Well, it sounds like some of the real big ones are counting on grants.
Alex's roof, I believe, is counting on the grants. This building is not counting on grants. It's a million from the reserves and 3.5 million in the form of a loan. The fire hall, although it says grants, it's the Canada Building Fund, so we've already received that money and we have to spend it by the end of 2026 or give it back to the government. So the fire hall is a big project that we're allowed to do under that grant, and that's why I've pushed that money in that direction.
Okay.
Councillor Cannon?
I like the budget, but you said, that we were trying to increase the reserves. How do we get back to that after spending all of this money?
How do we get back to the 12 million?
Well, I don't know if we'll ever get back to the 12 million, but how do we not spend it so that we get in trouble?
So I think there's an anomaly of things that are happening here. We have a lot of very old infrastructure. We have a lot of very old buildings. In this plan, we're addressing 2 of them. We're addressing some of the bigger equipment. I think we're taking care of the fire department. And I think what didn't happen historically in the past is we didn't have a mindset of long-term planning, which in the past few years we have. And we've not eliminated the long-term planning from this budget either. We've reduced it a little. We've not drastically, but we have reduced it. We've supplemented it with the capital levy. So the impact's not severe. So I think to me the big difference is we're putting away small sums of money for rainy days later, which we haven't done in the past, in the far past. In the last 4 years, 5 years we have been, and it's why we are where we are today. It's part of the reason why we are where we are, and part of the reason why we've been able to do some of these bigger projects.
So bottom line, what is this going to cost the taxpayers in increases next year?
So Maury already spoke to that earlier today. Our outcast or what we're predicting, our forecast is 4% tax increase and a 2% levy increase.
So 6%.
6%. Even though our budget is down over 14.5%, we were able to find cuts and come up with ways to offset those impacts.
What somebody's paying the increase per year?
That will be part of the operating budget. I think Maury also spoke earlier this evening where the operating and capital budget really should be done together, and that's the plan to do that in January, to introduce that. So this is an introduction, like every year, to council of the capital spending plan for the next 4 years.
Okay, thanks.
So I think in summary, because I think we're all having similar concerns, and we really want to see how this wraps up. What council and what anybody watching can expect to see is tonight was our first glimpse at capital budget. In January, we'll have our first glimpse of the operating budget, and then we'll have one final meeting where we pull it all together. Is that my understanding of how the budgeting process will be laid out? So I think I heard you say yes. I don't think it was in the microphone. So I'll just say for who might have been listening online, but.
Yes, so I think what we're asking for this evening is a public input period. So starting tomorrow, probably for the next 3 weeks, so till about the 9th or 10th, 11th of December. I don't have a calendar in front of me, I'm sorry. To have a public input period for the public or council to come back with questions, comments, concerns. And the December 10th meeting, I think, will also be bringing forward the user fees, the schedule of fees, that's what I was going to say. And then January, we're looking at early in January presenting the operating budget and tying the capital budget into that.
Perfect.
And after the beginning of January, there'll also be a 3-week public input period for the operating budget.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions, comments from council based on the information received? I know it was a little bit like getting a drink out of a fire hose. Councillor Opato?
There's lots of information. I'm looking forward to seeing more and discussing it more. This is just an overview. There's a lot of surprises, and I think we'll have to work through some of them.
Councillor Cannon?
I just want to say well done to the staff. Without you doing what you do, it makes our job easier.
Councillor Hoffman?
I'm going to say the same thing as Kathy. You guys have done a good job, and I'm liking what I'm hearing because I want to see a new town hall. I want to see a new fire hall, so if we can do it, great.
Councillor Hatfield?
I just have a comment to say, I really want the citizens of Wawa to understand our infrastructure. It's getting old. It's a really tough time. Money is hard to get. Grants are hard to get. So just take a look at what we're trying to do with what we have, and I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. And I just want to remind council, Mayor and Council, that tomorrow we will start a public input, and please feel free, any of you, to come in and see me or Maury with any questions, concerns you may have. Email, phone me, however you'd like to do that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So with no other comments or questions from council, I will thank you very much for everybody's great work tonight. And we will move on to item number 8, closed session. 8.1, moving into an in-camera session. I will ask somebody to make a motion to approve. Councillor Hoffman, Councillor Opato seconding. All in favor? Carried. Item 8.2, legal issue for a land matter, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administration, tribunals affecting the municipality or local board under the Municipal Act. And we'll give everybody a second to Are we ready? Are we back online? Item number 9, return to open session. 9.1, return to open session. May I have somebody make a motion to approve? Councillor Hoffman? Councillor Pato? All in favor? Returning into open session at 8:30 p.m. There are no business arising from closed session.
Moved by Councillor Pato, second by Councillor Hatfield. Resolved that the following bylaws be introduced and read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. Bylaw number 3753-24, to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on the 27th day of November 2024, and bylaw number 3754-24, to amend an error in the transferring of property from Algoma Central Railway, Inc. to the Corporation of the Municipality Wawa, and then from the Corporation of Municipality Wawa to Algoma Ferris Industries.
All in favor? Carried. Item number 12, adjournment. 12.1, close of meeting.
Moved by Councillor Hatfield, second by Councillor Pato. Resolved that the meeting close at 8:31 p.m.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work tonight. Have a great evening.